Hey, welcome to Lydia Nicole's Acting Smarter podcast. This episode is brought to you by Acting Smarter Now, an online program for actors to empower you to be the best you can be and live the best life you can live as an actor, as well as my Acting Smarter planner, which is packed with all kinds of good stuff to help you navigate the business of show without being stressed, without feeling inferior, but being empowered, feeling like you are the star that you wanted to be. So, today I am so excited to have an incredible writer. So, my first question is, what makes a great script?
Ooh, what makes a great script? It's a bit of a recipe, Lydia. It's a bit of good story, really developed characters, but it's being able to craft something that connects universally to an audience. And no matter what genre your story lives in, if you can find the place that speaks to every experience, whether that's love, pain, loss, overcoming, heartache, it doesn't matter if you're a cowboy or a spaceman, it speaks to someone. So there's a lot of good ingredients that go into making a good story great.
Well, I want to introduce everyone to you. One of my favorite people, my birthday sister, my Christian sister, my sister creatively. I'm so proud of you. For those of you who don't know, this is Anne Marie Moray. If you don't know her, you should, because she is a badass and we love her. She is not only a writer, but she is a showrunner. She has been a story editor and a staff writer. She is also a warrior princess, a giver. She is filled with joy, courage, honesty, love, and compassion. And she comes to the table talking about race, social justice, and faith. She is the embodiment of a wonderful writer who, even though she is of color, she can see universally. So without further ado, oh, I forgot to mention some of your credits because they are bad. Um, First of all, Anne Marie, I'm just going to brag on you a little bit. Anne Marie was the first Canadian to win the Nichols Fellowship Screenwriting Award. Not only that, but she was the first person to enter the script twice without changing it and won. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And then to come out of the gate with her film, How She Moved, and got so much play from Sundance is so impressive. Moving forward, she's done stuff like Killjoy, Rogue. Um, Recently, she did American Soul. For those of you Soul Train people, that was the bio television series on Don Cornelius and Soul Train. And last year, she did The Porter. She was the showrunner and writer for The Porter, which was Emmy nominated and got a lot of buzz. And which is it's an incredible show that has been running on BET Plus. So and one last thing, Anne Marie is Jamaican Canadian. People, Jamaican Canadians in the house. So so I've known you for a bunch of years, but
Mhm.
I, even though I know you're Canadian, even though I know you're Jamaican, I always just see you as my sister. So it is. I think it speaks a lot about your universality. That you can travel the world, and we just see Anne-Marie. We don't see a color or culture. It's just that's Anne-Marie. So I just wanted to throw that out there because you are an amazing, uh, not only an amazing human being, but an amazing writer and a generous writer. because years ago I remember going to your writers group, and you were always generous with us, always. And you had a lot of stuff going on, but you always took time with the writers to really help them flush out what the story was, what the next step was, what they needed to do. And so I want to talk a little bit about process with writing, because it's
Mhm.
not easy. And what always amazes me is that you're not an introvert. You're outgoing, you're fun, you're always like wanting to have a good time, but you write beautifully. So I just wanted to throw that out there and just talk about what your writing process is, first of
Mhm.
all.
Well, the process, and thank you for that remarkable introduction. I'm like, you're going to be my new PR person. I'm going to take Lydia on the road everywhere I go. That's beautiful. The process is different for me depending on the project and the phase. When I write for myself, I write differently than when I am staffed to write on a series or on a film. For myself, let me speak to that. I've been a lot of years writing, so I've studied, I went to school for film production. I've studied scripts like, young athletes study their favorite player, and there was a time where you could name the script, name the writer or the production company, and I could tell you everything that they had done and all the genres, but it was my business to know about structure and act structure. And I took the seminars, all kinds, ones that were great and ones that were not so great, and studied screenwriting. So I learned the building blocks of the craft, and I wrote sort of according to those. I didn't turn in 140-page feature scripts. I didn't turn in, a 50-page half an hour specs. I learned basically what was expected. And then for myself now, after years of that, I'm able to break the rules in a way that I am comfortable with, because in the back of my mind, that is such a strong muscle, the hows of the writing, that if I want to do a one page and jump into script, I do that because I know where I'm going. If I am staffed to do something, it's a different process, because people pay for the phases. So they want to see the outline and they want to have their input. They want to see the treatment, which could be from 10 to 30 pages, and they want to have input, and there's revisions all along the way. If it's a TV series, you're in the room, depending on if I'm running or if I'm staffed or if I'm producing or consulting. It is a collaborative experience. And that was a difficult transition for me, because I started in features, which is very solitary in terms of the writing. And all of a sudden, you go from only child to who are all these people in my room with all their ideas and thoughts. It's very disconcerting. So you have to learn to listen and respond and give, if it's a productive, if it's a healthy room, give positive feedback in a way that is constructive and helpful. Not every room experience is like that. Sometimes people are set up to kind of be against each other or be hostile, but that's never been an environment that I love. And I would like to see less of that. But so the process is different all the time, but it's really, I know the fundamentals of the story. I know what I bring in a room. I know where my gifts are, which are a strong character, a strong voice, and intrinsic stories based out of those things. Other people are good pitchers, other people are good breakers, other people have. So I've learned my skill set over the years. And so the process leans towards to favor that. I, it's always interesting to people. I am an extrovert, but I'm also an introvert. So I'm happy with my own company. I'm happy in the company of others. In a room, I tend to be quieter in a room because I need to process things and then I'll spit it all out. Okay, I need to see things from, and other people need to da 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 da, and they have 100 ideas and this. So I think sometimes people feel like if they're not the loudest or the fastest, that they have no space for the way that they operate in our industry, and that's just not true. So that's a long-winded answer to the process is different, but I made it the business to learn the craft from day one.
Love it. You said a couple of things that I want to hit on. The
Mm-hmm.
first thing is collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working on a TV series, is more collaboration and partnership than when you're working on a script by yourself. And
Yes.
so I want to know what that collaboration process is when you're in a room, in a writer's room, and you're working on something that you have to spit out in a week or 10 days, and how you show up for the collaboration, because everybody's going to be different, but how you show up.
My number one job in the room, if I am not the showrunner, my job is to execute the showrunner's vision. End of. I think having been on the other side now, having been a showrunner, I don't have time to argue with anybody about what I see or why I see it. I just need you to help me make that a reality in the best way possible. So, as a writer in the room or a producer in the room or whatever combination I am in service to the showrunner, it's like, how can I come in saying, how can I help you make this great? So if they need me to do a dialogue, if my skill is the voice or hearing the characters and they want to pass or something, I'll do it. But I have to fall in line with what they see for the series. And so when I write, I to the font and to the font number, even to the point number, I was like, what are they doing in terms of their outline? How? And I follow their step, whether I agree with it. And they're not just there to have you sort of be a yes man. They really want your honest opinion on something because everyone who's in the room has usually been vetted to a certain degree. Like you didn't just wander off the street into that room. You were there because you bring something to the table. So bring your thing to the table. But when that person says, you know what, I hear you. I think that's a good idea, but I think I'm still going to go. I'm going to go this way with this character. I'm going to go this way with the storyline. My job is okay. Let's figure out how to make it work. Let's. I see what you want to do. Let's make it work. And I have to tuck my own objections or whatever sometimes in my pocket and just help them make the best. My job is to make them shine, and that shows up in a lot of different ways. But that's my job, and I hope that when I'm running a room, it's let's we're on the same team. Let's get this done together. But I don't have time to fight you on what I see.
It's not a fight, it's a unifying
Absolutely,
time. It's time to unify, not to divide.
absolutely.
That's so important. It is so important to be on the same page, whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and we sometimes we don't. We're so busy wanting to shine that we don't get it's about service, because
Mm-hmm.
you've said that a couple of times.
Yes.
It's about servicing the piece. It's about servicing the creator, not about servicing ourselves.
Absolutely. And people who deliver shine. And they don't have, nobody has to prompt me for a recommendation. If you're coming into the room, you're giving 100% or 110. Hey, I researched this thing that we were talking about yesterday. Here's a couple links. Here's a couple pages. Here's a couple things. I'm like, I will remember that person and want to take them with me or speak well of them when somebody calls and says, hey, what do you think about so and so? I'm trying to staff. Um, and conversely, I will remember those who brought a negative or harsh or combative experience into the room or just didn't deliver on what was asked of them. So I never like to speak ill of people. I just need, when you're in that space, let's be a family. Let's keep our bad, sad stories outside of the room and let's make great work together. It's my goal.
I love that. um you also talked about listening, and I heard you say something um in a another interview that you talked about how to be a good listener.
Mhm.
And part of it was to just listen and not judge. So
Mhm.
can you open that up for me and just,
Yeah.
because sometimes we have a hard time listening.
Yes. I think sometimes we're trained to think the loudest voice in the room is clearly the one that we lean to. But if we are storytellers, we need to be observant of the lives that are telling these stories. And sometimes, I could go to a party or an event or something and just not say anything and just be constantly let your soul, let your eyes, let your ears take in the experience completely. Um, and then you're able to kind of translate that into, but sometimes people, or we come in with this, I have 1,000 questions. I'm let human nature surprise you. Let people's stories surprise you. There's nothing that annoys me more than cookie cutter characters and stories based on sort of I don't know, sort of these notions or the ideas of people. I did a story once, I remember, and it was a really difficult story. It was based on the Magdalen laundries in Ireland. And let me just say, I'm the writer who writes whatever appeals to me. I don't want to be boxed in. I don't want to be XYZ writer. I want to be the writer that tells good stories. That's my genre of choice. But I was writing, doing the research, and I went to Ireland. And basically, if you don't know about this story, I think Miramax ultimately did a film about it or beat us to the punch with it. But these young women who, for decades, were sent to these institutions it was essentially slave labor for hosts of reasons. You could just be sent to the laundries to have the nuns look after you. But I was struck by the story because they had dug up the property of one of these places, and there were the bodies of so many women and infants buried in the back. And they had brought an older woman to the facility, and she physically could not approach the building. And that's what got me, is like, this woman is in her 60s and cannot even go to the building. So, of course, I did what any Jamaican Canadian girl does. I hopped a plane to Ireland, and I was like, I'm gonna find out what's going on. My poor mother, God bless her, she's making a body over there. I was like, Mom, it's all right. But how do you tell a story about nuns who beat women and create a full character that is not, while you sit down at the table and you talk to these women, some of whom never wanted to be nuns in the first place, who had this trickle down effect of men who didn't want to be priests who abused women, who didn't want to be nuns who abused women, who had no power, and it's like this chain effect of just anger. And it's like, so it created this character, or these characters, that were more than nuns who beat women. They were full and complete and flawed and horrible, and some lovely. And so I think that's the challenge for writers. It's like, you have to listen, you have to come in and saying, you have to set your own anticipation of who they are and what they should be, and then come back with these stories that are rooted in something deeper, because you know how to set your expectations aside and come in with open heart and open ears, whether or not the notion of who and what they are offends your personal moral sensibility. That's got to sit down for a second. You don't abandon it. Obviously, there are people who are doing horrible, terrible, despicable acts in the world, and those are not to be condoned or supported or celebrated. But if I'm telling it's the story of that person, I'm telling it in its completeness. And that requires my listening with every part of my being.
What comes first for you, character or story?
Character, 100% character. And I envy those people who are like, I got this $1 million idea. It has hostages and planes and things that blow up and transformers. And I was like, I wish I was that person. I am not. I have a character that is, and they lead me into the story, but sometimes it does turn the table. I recently did a spec based on a feature TV series spec based on an idea that I couldn't get rid of. And then the character came closely after that. And it was probably one of the most fun things I've written in a long time. I was like, oh, did I make that idea? Is that a thing? And so I called my friends, is this a thing? Have you seen this thing in this genre? Like, no, I don't think so. And so that was fun. But usually I am haunted by a character who has a story, and then I need to build the world for them.
Who are people in your life that you bounce off the stories or the characters just as a sounding board for you?
I have one of my dearest friends, though, and I hate to, like, we keep laughing at how many years it's been since our days of university. It's like 30 years and 20 years and 30 if we stop counting. But he is predominantly a playwright, also a feature and a TV writer, and now more recently stepping into that world. But he is the red pen, there's no emotional attachment to my stories for him. He just cut, don't understand, da da da. And so he's the first person that I go to, because the last thing that I need is use your aunt's opinion. That's great. Everything's great. I love it. Why aren't they buying it? Those silly people. I'm like, no, I actually need you to really read this and weigh what's working and what's not based on me or your love for me. Like, is the story working? So I do have, and then I have a few other people in the industry who are busy, but we make the time because, as you said, we started out in these small rooms together, this writers group together. We grew together in our industry. So we will make the space for each other to read each other's work. But I go first to my longtime university friend. It's like, here it is. Here's the red pen. Have at it. And he does.
So I love the idea of the red pen. I never heard that. Uh, my teacher used to talk about killing your babies,
Mhm.
that you cannot have anything that you write be so sacred that you can't get rid of it.
Yes, true.
Have you ever had a time when you knew it wasn't right, but you didn't want to let it go?
So it happens often. And so what I do for my psychological well-being is I put it in it's whatever the script title is called. It's like that bits is the name of the folder. So if it's like ABC bits, and so I put that little thing that I love and and I just cut it and I throw it in the folder, like, just in case I need it. It's there. It hasn't really been deleted. I can go pull it out if I. But I think 99% of the time, I do not go back into that folder. If it's cut, it stays cut. Like, the one time you actually do, it's probably a line or two or something that you take from there. But I have a very hard time killing my darlings. So I put them in a cradle off to the side of the screen, away from my sight. But yes, they need to go.
So when you wrote How She Moved,
Mhm.
were there a lot of babies that you put in your folder?
So I had an orphanage full of babies, because originally that story started with a male lead. And there was I was just having this difficulty in really finding the voice. And one of the notes from this studio, from the network at the time, said, you write really strongly from the female voice. Why isn't this a female lead? I'm like, why isn't it a female lead? And then so many things had to change. That was a huge shift, but it was the right shift. You were 3 drafts in at the time, so all of a sudden, okay, what does that look like? How does that break? And it was the right decision to make. That's when the story really began to gel. But it was a lot of work to get to a shooting draft of that script. There's a lot in there. A lot of babies in the orphanage, a lot.
What I love about that movie is we get insight on being a Black Canadian because we don't get
Mhm.
to see that
Mhm.
often. And
Yes.
so, was that like, did you consciously make that choice to go, okay, I'm gonna write from this point of view because
Mhm.
this is what I know.
Yes. Yes. 100%. I think what is frustrating for me and a lot of other creatives of color is there's this notion there's one way to be XYZ. Like there is one way to be Black in the world, and it looks like whatever's on American primetime. I'm like, oh no, 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 no. Like we are such a diverse group in and amongst ourselves. And that community for me, I mean, Jane and Finch is very well known in Toronto in terms of being an immigrant community. It is beautiful things grow there, but it also for a long time when I was going to university, I was warned against living there because there's so much crime and violence. And I was like, the notion of who we are based on, whatever people decide your communities are can sometimes be so scarring and so far from the truth. I just wanted to tell the story that was ours and uniquely ours, and Caribbean culture and Canadian culture and the way that they interplay. Person from Scarborough speaks differently than a person from. So there are things that are special to us, like, there are communities that are special to you, but hopefully we were trying to find that way that spoke to everyone about what it's like to be the child of an immigrant family and feel the expectations on your shoulder and want to try and find your own way. And I think you don't need to be Jamaican Canadian to understand that, but there is something special about saying, hey, this is who we are and we're different and we are proud of our differences, but we are together in this universe and fight together. So I love that about the show. I mean, even how she moved. Uh, uh, I remember there's, on message boards, people were, oh, there was a big brouhaha about the name of the film. And I thought, that's how we talk. It's how she moved on. Like, that's how we talk. So, and people, well, it's as if you're speaking from outside of our experience and saying this is how it looks like to you, but that's how we talk. So that's our patois. That's our language. So you can. So even when you weigh into this, everybody was sort of up in arms. I mean, not everybody, but a great number of people were up in arms about the film title. And it's like, I don't have the energy for people who are not chasing their own dreams. And if once I make the explanation, if it doesn't suit you, that's okay because no matter what you do, there will be someone that is displeased, and you just have to accept that and keep creating anyway.
I have two questions, one a little to the left, and then we're coming right back to this. Um, how old were you when you went to Canada from Jamaica?
Hmm. I think I was probably 5 when we came, and we came basically. I grew up in a smaller, it's not so small anymore, but a smaller city in Ontario, Canada. But in my area, we had a high population of immigrant families. So my one side of the street had about 4 or 5 different families from Jamaica, and then we had South Asian families and Arabic families. And so we had, yeah, it was such, I'm so grateful for that because I learned from so many, without even thinking, without even realizing I was gifted with the ability to listen and learn. And who learns to belly dance when they're in 7th grade? One of my friend's mom is, right? And so we learned to do that because, she did that and it was great. And I didn't think anything of it, but that I am still close to those people after all of these years. So it's something very special and something that I prize is growing up there.
Going back to how she moved, did
Mm-hmm.
you go into that neighborhood and do research like a writer, or you just took from your experience?
Yeah, I took from a large. I didn't live that. I mean, my first year of university, I didn't live that far from that specific neighborhood. I went to university in Toronto, and so it was a short bus ride. That's where I went shopping. That's right. A lot of the community events in terms of our. So I'm very familiar and comfortable with that neighborhood. But it's also part of our collective experiences because there's a way that we are together uh, when Jamaicans get together, or when it's different than when Caribbean people get together, because who's got the best island is the thing. It's like it's different than, and you learn. I mean, my mom was very clear when we moved to Canada that there was an expectation from others that you were going to be judged. And so when you go out in the street, you speak a certain way. When you were in school, you speak a certain way. So there was a way that we are to the world and way that we are to each other. So yeah, it's very much a community that I'm still close to my heart.
I want to ask a question
Mm-hmm.
about being judged. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do today? What tool do you use when you're being judged, or when you feel like you're being judged?
Now, do you mean in terms of?
As a writer, as a Black woman,
Mm-hmm.
as just someone in the business,
Yeah.
because we are judged. There's always judgment, especially if you're not uh, the traditional white, white male writer, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's judgment on you.
Yes. Yes. I think it depends on the situation. The beautiful thing about where I am in my career and in my journey is I like to say I paid my dues, I left a tip. So, so now I have a little bit more freedom to call someone out on behaviors or attitudes, and the way that you do it and the means that you do it will be different. Um, but on behavior that I think is judgmental or hypocritical in terms of how I am being treated as a woman of color, um, it hasn't been that long. I mean, female showrunners we were not in the high numbers. And then I was so grateful because of the scope of The Porter. I had an amazing co-showrunner with me. We ran the series together, named Marsha Green, another amazing Black woman from a different island, but I love her like my sister. But I was laughing. We laughed because people thought, oh, two Black women together, this is going to be bad. Like, this is going to be a situation. And we were like, why is that the assumption that we are not going to be able to get, like, that girl? I would lay down in this, I would take a bullet. And likewise, I'm sure. So you have to fight against that notion of who you think you are and just continue to do the work. But when you stand together and say, listen, this treatment, this misogyny, this XYZ, we're not staying. I'm in a comfortable position to do that now. Society has had a shift in terms of you cannot tell stories about us without us. It's a new thing in our industry. I mean, I used to be in rooms where people would tell me what a Black woman wants. I'm like, I'm the only Black woman in this room telling me what this character seems to. So we're the benefits, but my job is also to provide a safe place for people who are not in my space. So sometimes there are younger BIPOC writers who will come to me and say, hey, I'm having this issue, and I will voice for them because they're not here. They're not here to have the agency or the authority to say, I'm not doing that, because they're a junior. They're just starting out. So my job also is to clear space for them and take on some of their battles. So yeah, it's a lot. You have to address it clearly, but everything doesn't need to be a screaming match. When you need to scream, you scream. But everything doesn't need to be, sometimes it needs to be a conversation, because people have an unconscious almost bias or an unconscious sort of gut reaction, because they've grown up, they've come up in a way. It's been white men and they're kind of used to, and it's like, okay, this is not that. And you have to remind them of their own unconscious biases sometimes.
I didn't want to go here so quickly, but we're here. So, because there's so much to unpack, but the fact that we had two Canadian Black women showrunners of The Porters, which was Emmy nominated, it got a lot of play. It got a lot of accolades.
Yes.
That says something. And how do you feel? How do you feel bringing forth not only two Canadian Black women, but the whole team of writers, the creator,
Mhm.
everybody was Black, the directors. It was really a whole Canadian Black um love fest,
It really was. I
which
love
we don't
this.
hear about. We
Yes.
don't hear about, even with the Porters being out there in the States. It wasn't like, hey, this is
Mhm,
Canadian
mhm,
made. We
mhm.
They're just Black people. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I mean? And I think that's a moment to pause and go, wow, this is, not only is it impressive, but it's kind of historic.
It's
We don't
very
have
historic.
that. So, can
Yeah.
you speak on that a little bit? Because I want to know how the room was.
Oh
What
my
was
goodness.
happening?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, this has been, and I will say, in full disclosure, that it started. I inherited the project. This is not something that I sort of dreamed up. It came from a writing team, actors who had sort of begun to delve into producing and writing their own material, named Arnold Pinnock and Bruce Ramsey. Arnold is Caribbean, Black Canadian. Bruce is white French Canadian. And they have been friends and performers together. Actually, Porter was the first time they got to perform together, because Arnold played one of our porters, and Bruce played our conductor of not so high moral fiber. But from that, they had been trying to get it made for about 10 years. And so different people had stepped in and out of the process for different parts. And so I felt honored, Marcia and I feel honored to be kind of people who were birthing it really into the life that it took on. But there was such a lot of talent, such a lot of amazing people were so hungry for this opportunity to be in this world, to be in this story. It was almost overwhelming. People would audition and cry, like you just for the opportunity to be in this kind of series and to play these kinds of roles. And so when we were putting together the room, we said, okay, we might never have this. If we don't, let's create. We went on an all Black writers room. And not to say that we didn't read wonderful writers who are amazing, but we have this rare opportunity to have an experience where you feel 100% safe. Because we, as Black creators and creatives, have often been in the space where we felt we had to censor ourselves or rein it in, or not to, but to be in a space where you can speak and be understood. Even there again, I say there's not one experience. So I'm from here and they're from there, and some of them grew up in Canada, and some of them came over, and some of them were more mature writers who've been they were new older writers, and I was like, new writers aren't all 19. They bring in. So it was for me it was a challenge, but it was a challenge worth taking on, because I will never forget to sit in this room and say, look around this table. I've never seen this in my life. And I want somebody to take away the feeling like we came together, we broke these stories, we carried generations of stories. People would write us and email us, and we had our historical consultants, and uh, it was so interesting just telling the story. When a movie before our American partner came on, they were shocked to know that we had a history in Canada that included these beautiful, amazing, strong, intelligent, trained porters. I'm like, oh, we thought that was just our thing. I was like, our history has been so redacted, and so we got a chance to tell people you have skin in the game of this nation, and to tell grown people who would cry, who just fathers and grandfathers who worked those trains and just cry at the idea of being represented in this way. So it was a challenge. It was difficult. We didn't always, you were tired a lot. But to look back and say, man, we really took on a lot and did some honor to these generations of stories and to our country. And we still made good TV. We made good TV, and we're proud of the TV we made. So it was a lot going on, Lydia. It was a lot.
Well, what was great about the Porters, for people who don't know, is that it was not just because we know about, well, let me not say we. I know about the Porters in the States. About 15 years ago, or it might have been a little longer, Robert Townsend directed 10,000 Black Men Named
Yes.
George, which was
Yes.
about the Pullman Porters.
Yeah.
But what I did not know was that it extended from America to Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and that this was the first time Blacks in America and Canada united to create a labor
Absolutely.
union, which
Absolutely.
is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Again, so much history that we don't know, and which
Mm-hmm.
is why it is so important to be a storyteller. It is important to be
Absolutely.
a writer of color, to share the history that we are denied knowing about. So I just wanted to put that out there because it's so impactful, and the show is so vivid and colorful.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It's just
Oh,
beautiful
thank
to
you.
watch. So for people who
Thank
haven't
you.
seen the Porters, go ahead on to BET Plus, pull that little money
Absolutely.
out, go ahead and
Absolutely.
get a subscription, if
Absolutely.
just
Yes.
for this show, and then you can
Just
go
for
ahead and
this show.
cancel if you want. But but it's definitely a watch. Watch
Yes.
it. How was the experience? Because you had two high profile Black historic projects that you worked on, that
Mhm.
you really put skin in the game.
Yes.
So the other project was American Soul.
Right.
So how was that as opposed to this?
Yes. I mean, it's a completely different process. And uh, Devon, who was the showrunner on the series, and was in that writers group in our little place in LA, just gathering together. So Devon and Gregor, we started out as that little group. So when I got the call from him, I think I was in Toronto at the time, and he called me up and said, "Hey, I'm doing the show. I think I'm going to need you to come down." Um, you know, okay, of course. But I'm here to make his vision reality. So, every showrunner has a different style, has a different approach. And I think for Devon, it was like, listen, if the show isn't just about the show, it's about kind of, similarly, The Porter isn't just about, train workers trying to unionize. It's about ambition. It's about unapologetic Black ambition, is what we said. And I think similarly, American Soul was about that for Don Cornelius. And when you're dealing with people's lives, you have to really not only be mindful, but you take some liberties, and you hope that you've captured the spirit or the essence or the ideal. So, but my goal was, how can I make this? How can I make Devon shine? How can I make the show shine? What do you need from me? yeah, it was really to serve his vision, and I was happy to do it. Absolutely.
In that writer's room, were there a lot of women in there, or was it just you?
I'm trying to remember. There was actually there were some juniors. There was another senior writer there, and I don't mean it in age. I mean it in experience. Although, and she, what I loved is that she had a rich history in television going back to All in the Family. And
Wow.
we don't think of like, hey, black female writer going back, you know. And she was like, yeah, when I was there, people were trying to tell me to, you know, I should be at home baking cookies. And so every generation owes a debt to someone who told that woman to stay at home and bake cookies, who told you that, you know, this is how, told, you know, telling white people, telling me this is how black people think and up. So we all sort of paid different debts to kind of push us forward. But that was really wonderful to me. And we had juniors and assistants who had aspirations to be, and so it was a nice collection of voices and experiences. And again, we all had our different strengths and skill sets. And I think he really assembled a team that he could trust around that table.
You said something about unapologetic ambition.
Yes.
We put it to black people, but that is that is huge to be
Mm-hmm.
to be a person of color and
Yes.
be unapologetic because you want something.
Mm-hmm.
As a writer, how do you write something like that without without making the person look like a villain?
Mm-hmm. Yes. It
Because if
is.
white people do it,
Yes.
that's great, but when
Yeah.
people of color do it, we're villainized for it.
Mm-hmm.
At
Yeah.
least I think I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah. I mean, it's sexy. It's Gordon Gekko, you know, when it's cutthroat. I want the right to be everything, every character trait that you feel you are entitled to be as well, because there's no such. I mean, it was that's one many sort of awkward black girl, which you know became insecure. I was like, yes, there are a lot of black girls going to Comic-Con and doing their thing. There are a lot of people who are like want to be the next sort of Wall Street CEO, and they're stomping on people to do it. There are a lot. Uh, I want to be and create characters and create a world where anything you feel as a white character, my BIPOC characters have that space, but it's really building and constructing both worlds that are rich and full. I mean, not everybody in The Porter is a lovely human. My lead is problematic. You know, our lead, Junior Massey, is a problematic man in terms of his ambition choices. Zeke is a different person, but is he less of a person to kind of cheer for? No, I get you, but you're doing some problematic things. And I'm okay with those characters because they are fully constructed and realized. And so we are asking if you're going to tell these stories, and can we be fully constructed and realized in the stories that you construct about us? And we will do the same.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot of pushing to get these characters who are more than, you know, the savior or the whatever, the magical black, you know, savior is gonna wave something and make, you know, all your kind, you know, it's enough, but we're fighting for it. We're fighting for it. Yeah.
What are I want to bring in young people into this conversation, uh, because I think it's important for young people to understand that you have to pay dues,
You do.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
You do.
And
Yeah.
what does paying dues look like to you?
Well, I made a decision on what paying dues looked like to me very early on in my career. I went to film school. I was one of maybe 3 or 4 Black students who were in the program at the time. And I think 3 of us graduated the program. And the road was, well, you intern, you PA, you climb up the ladder, you work the really good. And I was willing to do all of that, climb the ladder, do this show, do this. So I was doing these different jobs. My goal was I will take any job that will let me write, because I knew that was my road. So any job that would let me write. And I remember working on a TV series, and it was very popular in Canada and the United States. But one of our executives was not a great human, was really having some issues around. But that was kind of overlooked and tolerated. But I remember the one day this person could not locate their lunch, which was not my responsibility. But they were so angry, they threw a cup that smashed over my head at my desk. And I remember looking up, and all these adult heads looked back down as if they didn't see it. It didn't happen. And I got up from my desk. I started to gather my things, and I walked out. And I remember my boss chased me down to the parking lot and said, no, it's okay. You know how they are. You just have to pay your dues. And I said, yeah, but I don't have to pay that. That's not that. I don't have to pay that, actually. So I'm just going to find my own way to this thing. And so that was the last production job I took for a while. I took a lot of not fun jobs, and I was an emergency dispatcher for an alarm company, and I worked the midnight shift because I could write. You didn't get a lot of calls in the midnight shift. I was an agent assistant. I was anything that would let me write, because I decided I don't mind working long hours. I don't mind if you're rude. I don't mind but you do not have the right to physically assault me or attempt to do so or degrade me. And that is in my DNA, inherited from my mother, who's like, no, you are a child of God. And when you know God, it's like, who do you bow to? No one. No one. So you are respectful to everyone, but you bow to no one. So, it took me a while to win the Nichols Fellowship, but I took every job. So I think you have to decide, what does paying your dues look like? It looks like long hours. Sometimes it looks like low pay. Sometimes it looks like lack of acknowledgement or recognition, but it does not look like abuse. It does not look like denigration. It does not look like sexual violence or assault. It does not look like any of
or
those
harassment.
things. Or harassment. That is not paying your dues. That is abuse. And we need to, people talk about the Weinsteins, but we have all known monsters roaming freely in our industry. And the culture needs to shift to say that is not acceptable behavior because this person has a higher rank on the pay scale. No.
That was the culture.
That was the culture. Yeah.
That was the culture. I love what you said about that, because that has nothing to do with paying dues. Paying dues means you're learning your craft, you're working hard, you're gleaning from everyone you can, so that when you get your opportunity, you are ready.
You are ready. Nobody, I said, don't ever come to me with your first draft of your feature script. Like, don't ever come to me with your first draft. I just tell people, oh, this is my first draft. It was never my first draft. It was my draft 6 or 7, you know what I mean? And done the work, did the thing, went to the story editor. So some people want what you have fought for years for in a single meeting or a single encounter. Hook me up with your agent, hook me up with your manager. It's like, how many scripts do you have? Where did you shop them? Where did you study? Did you shoot a short? Did you do this? And it's like, no, they want what you have sacrificed for years for without putting in sweat equity is what it takes. It's a lot. And God bless it if you are born into it. My mom worked in healthcare. My dad worked in a factory. I had no nepotism available to me to get me through those doors. So you got to make sure you are ready for that opportunity. And if you are asking for someone's time, you are asking for their money because their time is valuable. Do not waste it with unpreparedness.
And
Don't do
how
that.
important, please talk on this, how important are rewrites?
Oh my, it's everything.
And how many
It's
rewrites should you
everything.
do before you show
Woo!
people?
Oh my gosh, writing, and it was one of the first things that I learned. Writing is rewriting. Two things that I learned that stuck with me early in the game. Writing is rewriting. That was number one. And writing is a daily appointment. And if you cannot keep it, you need to find something else to do. Yeah. And sometimes for me that it's like I'm stuck. And so even if I just break through like this little paragraph today, I'm walking the floor trying to break it through, but I have an appointment to write daily. And if I couldn't keep that appointment, I would find something else to do.
I
So
love
writing
it.
is rewriting. Those who feel like you can kind of do a little tweak, what we call a polish, and I say this, people are like, oh, you didn't change your script and you won this thing. I said, how many drafts do you think came before the script that I submitted to the fellowship? A lot, a lot of drafts actually. And I didn't change a lot. No, I didn't. I stood by what I felt was right for that script, but I had done a lot of work to get it to the place where I submitted that. So writing is rewriting, and that is the process. You will be on the set rewriting because this is too long. They can't make this. It's not clicking with the actor. It's not clicking with the location. You're not gonna make this day. You gotta cut this. But so you have to get really comfortable with getting that little thing, draft number, draft number, draft number, draft number. To be really comfortable with that idea. It takes a lot.
What is the writer's relationship to the actor?
Oh. It is different every time. The writer's relationship to the actor, when it works well, let me talk about when it works well. When it works well, you are honoring of each other's skills, talents, and abilities. Um, I cannot do what you do. You cannot do what I do. But when we sit down at the table together, what we do together can create something absolutely beautiful. Where it tends to go askew is where one devalues the other. Um, we're in the midst, obviously, of a strike, at least in the WGA, and I'm WGA, WGC. Um, so there's something that tightens in my chest when I see someone open a script that I've spent whatever saying and just count their lines. Come and talk to I am, for me, I'm open to any conversation because you are diving into this characters and these worlds in a way that I am not. You have to inhabit their skin, and so there are things that may not suit you or work with, but for me, like let's talk about it. And I'm going to trust you, and you're going to trust me, and I'm happy to make changes that come from a thoughtful place. But I have a real, when people red pen because they feel like, listen, if Alfred Woodard can ask me about, I think I'm going to change this thing, like this is the phrase and stuff. How's that? Is that all right with you? I'm like, yes, ma'am, it is. Like, if Alfred Woodard, I said, you need to talk to me. It's coming to me. But that's a woman with experience. But she comes and she does, and I respect the work, and so we can have, we can have any conversation when mutual respect. So I think that's when it works well. We all
we
play
we
together and
gotta
we work
we
well.
gotta talk about when it doesn't work well,
Oh
because
gosh.
I need actors to hear their funkiness when their ego is in the way of the
Mm-hmm.
story, when they don't come in
Yeah.
to serve the piece, because as
Yes.
actors our job is to serve what you wrote
Yeah.
and be able to trust the director to guide us into what we need to do. But I want your take on when it does not work, because
When it
this is
does
so
not work.
important.
Yes, I think when you have gotten, when you've received a piece of work, a script, or whatever, if it's done well, and not every writer is wonderful and gifted and talented, and and sometimes you get terrible script, and sometimes you have great script, and the cast is, um,
Not
but
great.
not great, not great.
I
Let's
wanted
just
to
say
finish.
that.
I wanted to finish that
Not
sentence.
great.
Go ahead.
So we have worked really hard. We have sat in rooms carving a long journey. Hopefully, if it's a solid piece of work, we have constructed a house together, made of story, character, and moments that cannot easily be dissected. So when someone, I'm not going to chop this, I'm not doing this, I'm not saying, basically what you're doing is you're striking at the beams of the house that is constructed, and it holds more than your character alone or your character's journey alone. Um, and you're really doing a disservice to the story as a whole without even thinking, like, hey, you know what? You're sending a lot of people back in the room to now rebuild this house because you've sort of arbitrarily decided, I don't think. Well, I don't think my character will do that. Well, let's have a conversation about why. Because I've lived with this character for 3 years, and then I'm trusting you to take it on and inhabit it in a certain way. But there are things that are fundamental, and there are things that are open for discussion. So I think it's the idea that somehow what you are deciding is best for everyone. You're kind of sometimes actors are looking at their part, their pillar in the house, and not the whole house of itself. And trust me, I am happy. I will work whatever it takes, because sometimes you write things like, it's not right. It's not right for this character. It's not, and you're discovering that on a journey together. I'm happy to cut, dissect, but it comes out of this place like we have had a real respectful discussion about it. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be us like, I will jump on the phone, a Zoom, a call, or whatever. You can pull me off the side. It could be lunch, it could be whatever. And let's discuss.
How can an actor approach you or another writer when
Mhm.
they're not feeling comfortable about the material, the
Yeah,
lines, because
yeah.
sometimes you don't have say as to who gets cast.
Don't.
You
Yeah.
they're there. There
Yes.
might be somebody's friend.
Yeah.
The studio thought they would be a good match for this, but
They
they
got a lot of
came in.
Instagram followers. I'm like, I don't know
Yes,
what they're gonna do with that, but
yes.
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
So how can an actor approach a writer to have that dialogue?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that goes, and it depends on the set dynamic. Sometimes that writer goes like a ping pong, writer to director to actor to director to writer. Sometimes directors want to be the one who kind of engages that communication, and you have to respect every relationship. Um, so given that if there's a director who says, yeah, if you got a problem, just go, the writer's there, please, by all means. Um, it's coming up to, it's like, hey, these are the thoughts that I've had. Come with your questions and not your dictations. I think that is a really good approach. It's like, questions, when you put it just in a question, I'm not sure, can you tell me what your, can you, whereas my person doesn't do this, my brother doesn't, it feels like you are under attack, and you are less likely to work in harmony with that person because you're feeling the work is being disrespected. And similarly, if I feel there's something that the talent is not, there's something very key, or there's something in a backstory that maybe is not translating in the pages. I mean, hey, I'll go to the director and, hey, can I get a few minutes? Or here, here's, can you maybe, this is something that was in a backstory that's not really coming through that I think could really impact. So again, it's all from this respectful place of communication, questions versus dictating. This is what it is, and this is how it's going to be. It doesn't serve anyone really well.
So let's talk about respect and
Mhm.
the writer strike. I mean,
Mhm.
you are, even though you're in Canada, you're still a
Yes.
WGA member,
Yeah.
and so the fight that is going on between the studios, the streaming, and the Writers Guild, as well as the Screen Actors Guild, is the Screen Actors Guild AFTRA. We got to
Yes.
include AFTRA. But
Yes.
what is going on is the fact that we are being marginalized as
Absolutely.
creatives. So as
Absolutely.
writers, it first of all, if it's not on the page, it's not going to be on the screen.
Mhm.
So the fight for writers is give us our money,
Yes.
pay us our residuals,
Mhm.
uh don't shorten our time because we need time to process. We
Absolutely.
need time, a good script takes time
Mhm.
to marinate, just like a
Mhm.
good meal.
Yes.
Everybody is not about YouTube shorts, and
Mhm.
some of us like a good story.
Yes.
It's not about turning
Yes.
your computer on or your camera on, and blah, 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 and that's the story. No, a good story takes time to craft. You had mentioned that the Porters took 10 years to
Mhm.
get made, and I'm
Mhm.
sure within that period there was a lot of tweaking before
A
they even got in
lot.
the writers
A
room.
lot. Yeah.
So if you can just address what the writers strike means to you as a writer.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm in the WGC. I was in the WGA. My membership wasn't active, and now when the strike happened, like I got to ask, like I'm going to pay my dues and reactivate my membership because this is not right. We feel um, it's been a long time, I think, since we sat at the table and talked about the way that the industry has changed in terms of how we are viewing, how we are watching TV, and how we're being compensated for that. And the strike, I mean, I realize I'm sitting in a kind of privileged position to be in Canada right now, and still able to work. But I was in LA in the last strike and walking the lines with my signs and my homies, my writing homies, and it was and it is worth the fight because there's no reason on earth that you should be able to make a living in this industry, to have health care, to be supported while people are making billions of dollars for your work, for your labor, for your creative equity. And it makes no sense to me why that isn't a discussion worthy of being had when people are still trying to figure out their side hustle and giving you 60 hours and you are, making cajillions off of them. So I think it's a painful position to be in, and I'm keeping in touch with people who have kids going to college, and there are real concerns about how am I going to survive this, and thankfully the guild does have some support in that, and people need to keep donating so those funds are full and active. But this is a stand. This is the time to make a stand in terms of how do we want our future to, what do you want to be locked into for the next few years? What do you want this industry to look like? Don't give me a chat GP, whatever written script, and then saying you can just do a polish on it and you will put that is not it's not even viable, but it's another way for people to abuse and take advantage. And you mean that is every great battle in terms of that is the Porter, that is like speaking truth to the power that is profiting from your labor. This is the end of the line. Like, this is the end. So I am with it. I understand it is a huge impact. I mean, for us here, a lot of our shows are co-productions, American and Canadian co-productions. And to lose that, obviously losing gigs and jobs and employment, and the pool of job availability shrinks. And for talent to, we have talent crossing the border and working here, and a lot of American shows are shot here. And so there are communities and whatever. There's so many communities and towns and industries who are suffering in this, but who are just unified. You cannot pick us down. You cannot divide and conquer us. We are unified in this thing. And so I know the WGC, I'm in a different part of Canada, but I know the WGC had a sort of a solidarity day in Toronto where WGC members were, out there and with their signs and standing in solidarity with the WGA. And I think that's the thing that wins, that we are not going to be broken or splintered by, any kind of little tactic that offers a crumb while you eat the whole loaf. No.
I agree, and I do think that it's important for uh viewers watching who are not creatives to support us, to
Absolutely.
say, hey, you're not going to treat those people this way, because during the pandemic, that's all I had was to watch, binge watch. So you pay these people what they deserve. Don't be chump
Absolutely.
changing them. Don't be
Thank
giving
you.
them
Thank you.
not even crumbs. It's like, well, you get a crumb, but you don't get a crumb. I'm
Yeah.
gonna give you a crumb, but it's
Yeah.
like it's the misunderstanding. It's them telling us when it's really a collaboration. The
Yes.
arrogance sometimes of people thinking that talent is minuscule when talent is big. If
Yes.
there is no words, you do not have a show. It's
Absolutely.
if the writers don't write, actors can't perform, directors
Absolutely.
can't direct. We and if we don't have the three together, then catering doesn't work,
Mhm.
wardrobe doesn't work, hair doesn't work,
Mhm.
makeup people don't work, the crew, the grips, the PAs, I mean, it goes on and on. The
Absolutely.
laundry services, the cleaning services, the
Mhm.
janitorial service,
Mhm.
none of that
Mhm.
works. Everybody feeds off of the
Absolutely.
creatives. It's not, oh, the studio, everybody feeds off of the studio. No, because if you don't have any product, you ain't got no studio.
Mhm. Mhm.
Whereas what they don't understand is, as creatives, we can go anywhere. We can put up a little, put up a sheet and make a show on the street.
That's
So
right.
we're gonna figure out how to create. We're always gonna figure
Absolutely.
out how to create.
Absolutely.
But them trying to steal food from the table and our
Mhm.
livelihood, to me, is despicable.
Yes.
It's just
To
despicable.
steal your image, to steal even your very
Yes,
image and
yes,
use. I was like, this is my face. This is my, like, uh, it is soulless. It is
yeah.
soulless
Not
behavior.
understanding the power of words.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT and all those AIs are fine for assisting.
Yes.
They're fine for assisting you if you're trying to research something, but they don't have heart, they don't have soul, they don't
Mhm.
have a history in their DNA.
Yeah.
They're computers, computer generated programs. So it's just, anyway. Yes, I will say to everyone watching, if you are not a creative, please donate to the Writers Guild of America Foundation, to Screen Actor, SAG-AFTRA Foundation,
Mhm.
for the talent, because a lot of them are, especially the writers right now.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
actors just went on strike, but the writers have not been working in over 2 months.
Yeah.
They're resourceful just as actors are, but we could use your help to donate. Instead of giving to those streaming services, put that money to the
Absolutely.
foundations
They're
of our
raising your price all the
guilds.
time anyway. Every time you turn around and charging you more. So come
Yes.
on now.
I want to switch and talk about how your faith, your you as a Christian woman,
Mm.
um, how you look at the industry through those eyes.
Mm.
You know, being a Christian woman, how do you walk as a writer,
Mm.
as a showrunner?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it affects it, it impacts me in a lot of different ways. And let's just say sometimes I feel like, hey, I'm representing that well, and sometimes I'm not. I'm going to be all the way real. Sometimes I'm like, oh Lord, I did not do well on your team today. Um, I was a staff writer on a show, and my catchphrase used to be, which seemed to pick up in the room, was like, listen, Jesus is just saving your life every day because I would have murdered you all. And so that became the room like, oh, yeah, no, Jesus just saved your life, like everybody used to say. But it really, honestly, there's such, it's a competitive industry that we're in. And sometimes that leads to behaviors that are really people consider self-protection or self-promotion. When I came into this business, I came into it with knowing that, okay, these are the gifts, these are God-given gifts, and the doors are open. You have no greater ability to open or close a door for me. So when you feel like my next job isn't dependent on whether or not I am complicit with bad behavior, or been in a lot of rooms and people kind of endure or participate in things that I think really harmful or unhealthy, because they want to come back the next season, or they want to be on your next gig. And sometimes that's the way it works because people tend to travel in packs, and they worked out with them on that show, or they went to film school. But I came in with the perspective that God opens doors that no man can close, and closes doors that no man can open. So if you are not responsible for that success, I'm responsible for the work and the preparation, but you can't actually make or break me in this industry. So then that gives me this certain, my manager used to say, well, you just burn the bridge and don't care what you're standing at. I said, well, they didn't build the bridge. So I'm going to burn it if I feel like I have to speak up for behaviors that are not okay, because you are not the source. So I think that gives me a certain freedom.
And that takes courage because most people are not willing to speak the truth. Most
Yeah,
people are not willing to say, it's okay that I burned the bridge. I'm
right,
okay with that.
right. Yeah,
That
you've got to
was
protect your
that was
paycheck. I understand it though. I do get it. Like I'm not. I do get it because you got to protect. Where's the next gig coming from? It's sometimes it's buttoning, and there are some tough seasons where the next gig wasn't there, and I was doing side hustles or whatever to make it. So I perfectly get it. Um, but part of that was, you know, and apologies to the children who happen to be listening to this podcast, but I was raised with a mom who said to me when I was probably in kindergarten, listen, there's no Santa Claus. It's just your mom and dad. If you need something, you come and ask me, but you can play along. So when I go to kindergarten, and I refuse to write a letter to Santa Claus because there's no such thing. My mama told me, and if I need something, I ask her, and have the whole class crying. It's like, it's just the truth. It's just the truth. So, and you could call my mama, but she's gonna be mad at you for calling her at work because it's just the truth, right? So I was raised to like, you just speak it. If it's the truth, it's the truth. I think one of the things that, I grew up saying or grew up being taught was like, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And so sometimes you got to do the math. Well, it might be true, but it's not neither necessary nor kind. So I'm going to just keep my mouth closed on this. But if it hits all three, then it's usually a good idea to open your mouth and speak. But yeah,
yeah.
that's just Anne Marie.
I no, I love it because I'm a bridge blower myself. So and maybe it's maybe it's a Caribbean thing. Maybe
Maybe.
it comes from coming from islands where you had to speak up for yourself, or maybe it's being a woman and you have to speak up for yourself, and you have to you have to show up and go, wait a minute, that's not acceptable behavior,
Yeah.
because I am about justice.
Oh, I love it.
you know
Yes.
I think that everyone should be treated well. Everyone should show up and do their jobs. And if you come at me, I am not necessarily going to take it kindly.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm
Right.
trying to be a better human being. But that's important. I want to talk about you mentioned something during this last answer, and that was sometimes the seasons are lean as an artist, that you're pitching, you're going on meetings, and but nothing's clicking.
Mhm.
How do you handle it as a woman of God?
Yeah, that's a good. You're getting some goodies in here today, Lydia. Yeah. When it's not cooking, I think I handle that in the same way that I come into every show and every experience. It's like, I really put it before God. Um, and I love the scripture that said, put me in remembrance of these things. I was like, God, you said you were my provider. You are my source. You were like, I'm just putting you in remembrance of your word, Lord. And I know, like, I speak to God like I speak to you, like I speak to my client. Now, not to say it's without awe or reverence, because it is, but it is, I'm open, like naked honesty. When I'm hurt, when I'm terrified, when I'm looking at the bank account saying minus money, and I was like, I owe the bank money. Like, Lord, this is not okay right now. And sometimes that season is longer than I would like it to be. That season is drier and more painful. I remember selling my sofa or selling this or selling whatever to make bills. And I would be mad about it. But it's like what you learn about yourself and about trusting in God when things aren't working the way that you want them to or expect them to. Writers, the script of my life would be written very differently than my life has unfolded. It would be so much more comfortable. It'd be me and Denzel talking to you about this. I'd be like, honey, get me a glass of, we would be just chilling like that. That is not the story, you know?
Yes.
Our scripts, our life scripts are come with such ease, but the life experience creates a faith that is cemented, that you learn more about who you are in the heat and the fire than you do in the comfort. And so I'm grateful for that on the look back, but sometimes, let me tell you, I do a lot of tantrums. I'm getting better at that, but uh, that is really where faith is grown and shown.
Is there something you could share with us that you learned during one of those dry seasons that God showed up,
Mm,
that that it almost matured you a little bit more, so you were a little better prepared for the next time, understanding
yeah.
that we go through seasons. Everything
Yes.
is not summer or spring,
Yes.
that we go through
Yeah.
the winter. Sometimes it's a very hard winter. You probably know more about
Absolutely.
winter than me, for living up in
I
Canada.
do. I do. Like I was just saying, today's the first warm day we've had in a little while in the summer here, where I am, anyways, in the East Coast part of Canada. But yeah, I think what one of the most powerful lessons that has come out of the lean seasons was where you are. Somebody wishes to be standing in your struggle right now. Some for what you think is struggle for someone else would be blessing. And learning to have a like just waking up every day and listing off the blessing that I woke up unaided and I looked with my visible eyes and saw the world, and I took a breath deep without any obstruction, that I have the ability to sit there. I am housed, that I can. So, like, when you start, like, it became the practice, even when I was afraid to go to the mailbox or answer the phone before the bills, but I was like, let me list and let me serve those who wish to be where I am standing. And so for me, it was a lot of years in youth ministry with those who had a much more challenging road in their young lives than I had in my mature, and were somehow navigating that or trying to navigate that. Really, it's a great starting place is to bend your knees and be grateful in the midst of the storm. And it takes time.
What did serving in church do for you as an artist?
So much, so much. I think uh, I always say, how do you tell stories about lives if you're not engaging with lives? And I think serving in church really brought me in relationship with people with experiences vastly different than mine own, and friendships that, and really, friendships that I would never have had, really, because my circles didn't move in that direction or whatever, or I was not, quote unquote, comfortable um, in this circumstance or that situation. And I think serving Eva keeps you humble. I'm gonna just like, right, because let me tell you, I do a lot of volunteer teaching in different programs, to just going across, and I spent a lot of time in Africa and different parts. And I tell you, every one that I have seen succeed, and that includes a couple Oscar nominees now who have gone on to find great things. I remember one, and I won't name her because I don't want to put her out in the world like that, but I remember she's a well regarded actress now and has done very well for herself. But I remember we were casting, we were teaching people how to make short films, and that was every part of the process. And this particular young lady was not cast, which is, now if you think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, how is that even possible? But she came up to the team and said, listen, I will carry cables, I will carry lights, I will do whatever. I just want to help. And I look at it, when I saw her on this international stage, like, I cry like a soccer mom, because it was like this heart. It's like, how can I serve you without any agenda, without any motive, and trust that the God who gave you these gifts and abilities has the ultimate power to elevate you in your season. You don't need to be backstabbing or whatever, but the serving, the humbled heart, the sit down and be humble is a for real thing. And trust that God will elevate and open doors of opportunity that you could not. It's a real thing. So I think that posture, that position, that serving in the church, serving those communities, volunteering wherever, that's a thing that teaches you so much, not just about expanding your circle of relations, expanding your knowledge, expanding your heart, but like, trust that God has got you, and that when it is your season, no one can keep you from that. No one. It's your time.
You've crossed many borders. I mean, not just coming into the United States from Canada, going to France, going to Africa, going to Ireland.
Mhm.
Um, it's got to change your perspective, because it's not your neighborhood.
Right.
Yet you are encountering humanity. And as a Christian, um, how has that been for you? Because you are a woman of service, and you are a giver. I mean, those are two things that we can't take from you. That's
Mhm.
like in your DNA, to give, to be of service, and to help community. That's just who you are. but going to other nations to do that, um, I'm just curious to know how that's either grown you, it schooled you, it's made you a better writer, it's made you a better woman, a better, what has it, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Mhm.
how has it affected you?
Mm, okay. Yeah, I think when I hear, there's a lot sort of really angry things being said and experienced on the internet and the world, and it seems to be like the hostility has jumped up. My group, your group, my politics, your politics, and I always think to myself, like, you really need to spread out beyond your block and realize how deeply connected we all are, no matter what corner of the world you call home. And the more that you do that, the more that you find these universal threads that are like, we all love our kids. We all want better opportunities. And you begin to realize the universality of this incredible world that we live in. And it's harder to buy into a stereotype of something when you sat down and you've broken bread and you've cried with, laughed with, danced with, just been in the midst of, sat Shiva with, friends and went to temple with other people. And I think I have probably one of the most kind of beautiful. I'm not of the Catholic faith, but I went to a monastery with friends. Like, I'm going. Do you want to go? Yes. Do you want to not talk for 6, 7, 8 hours a day? Okay. You want to not bring your cell phone? I guess. And just, and I was scared. But just to wake up and you smell bread baking at 4 a.m. And so a monk was up at 2 a.m. and there's just silence and it's just you and your thoughts and having a communication with your creator. I was like, I wouldn't have traded that experience, but it was so far outside of my realm. I'm Pentecostal, shout, clap, stomp kid, and then to be in this other space. So I am marveled, I'm humbled, I am like thrilled to connect with other experiences that teach me about myself and teach me about this amazing world. And of course, it translates into story. It translates into people and characters and voices that are rich, full, and true because you have this experience. And what I love on the side note is that I have made these remarkable friends, like all over the globe, that are like family to me. And we couldn't have grown up more different. We couldn't have come, but they are part of my heart. So I think there's so much that I've learned in so many ways. I've been blessed to just be crossing paths. Love it.
How important is it for creatives, be it an actor, a writer, a director, a filmmaker, not to be afraid of failing?
Woo! Failing is hard and it hurts. Let's just be real. I used to, when I went to speak at schools or whatever, I had, and I'm sure somewhere in one of these moving, because I haven't been living here long, so one of these moving boxes has a bag full of rejection letters. Full of rejection. When people used to actually mail you that in the mail. And some people hated everything, including my punctuation. One woman hated everything, and she didn't like my grammar. And it is hard. It is hard on the heart. Um, but what you learn and the persistence and the perseverance of something, I I praise this guy all the time, and I always will because I love him to bits and pieces. There's a producer named Jeremy Kleiner who has not been a stranger to the Oscar stage, running Brad Pitt's company and from 12 Years a Slave to everything, to Moonlight, to everything you can name, you will see Jeremy on the stage. But when I first met him was my first meeting in LA, and he was, I think, an assistant story editor or something. But I just remember him running down the hall, jumping over this little couch. Oh my gosh, I read your script. I love it so much. Great. Um, I'm recommend it to my boss to read. I love it. I love it. And we became, and we became friends and stayed friends. But I remember in my lowest moment when nothing was happening, when it was rejection after rejection after rejection after. He said to me, he wrote me a letter, and I remember the one line in the letter said, "It is not a matter of if, it is just a matter of when. Just need to hang on to till your when comes."
Mm.
And I held on to those words. I still hold on to those words. Some people question the if. It's like, if doors are opening for you, if you see even little acknowledgments of, hey, I made the first round, but I didn't win. The Nickel was my second year. If I had given up on the first, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to cross to the one of it. And so you have to trust that if you're doing the work, if the work is well received, sometimes it is just a matter of timing and opportunity for the right story to come to the right person, that you are doing all you know to make yourself ready for that opportunity. And the work is solid and the work is good. Hang on till the when comes, but rejection is a part of it. Sometimes the person that says yes, we've all heard the stories. Oh, everybody in town turned it down, and this, and we love the stories, but we don't want to live the stories, right? And that's a part of the journey.
That goes to something else I heard you say in an interview, and that was when you were in school, you were having a difficult time, so they called in a psychologist who happened to be a black psychologist
Yes.
because you were kind of not knowing where you were
Yeah.
supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah.
I want you to talk about that because it so resonated for me of having someone who sees you and
Mm-hmm.
hears you
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
what he said to you.
Yeah. It was, let me tell you, I had come out of an experience with an educator in my school, who I discovered had made several kind of "this is what Black women should be doing" comments to not just myself, but a lot of other. I came to realize later that she told the same thing to several other Black women that I knew. And she said that to you. She said that to me, but somehow it got me, because I thought I wanted to be in medicine at the time, and that's where a lot of my serving and volunteering was. And there was something that just broke me about the way that this person dealt with me, this educator dealt with me. And I have to say, it was a bit of a miracle. It was not even just a bit it was a real miracle that, of all, I had a guidance counselor who acknowledged that I had withdrawn from the system in a way that was unlike me. I was a participator, but I just stopped. And I don't think they went out of their way to find a Black psychologist. I just think the one person that was available happened to be, um, from the African diaspora, and he was a man. So when I could hear him, the counselor and this other teacher explaining that I had withdrawn, and he was very like, okay, yeah, I understand. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to have a few words. And he closed the door and sort of took a breath and leaned into me. He's like, and I'm going to censor myself. Don't you listen to one thing these white mother truckers tell you about who you are. If you want to do this. And I was shocked. It's like, what is happening, right? It's like, if you want to do this, if you want to be a doctor, you can be a doctor. There's not just one way in this door. I don't know who these people, they don't know who you are. And I was just like, never, but I was like, to feel validated, to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel advocated for was nothing that had ever been in my experience, of education. I was like, if I can turn around and make someone else feel valued, feel seen, feel advocated for, my gosh, that is what I'm on the planet to do. And so I always said, I'm on the planet to equip and empower other people to tell their stories. And every success I have gives me more authority to do so and gives me more room, power, influence to do so. That's my mission on the planet. And so I am so grateful, so grateful. I wish I remembered his name. I wish I could find him now, because every now and again I do track down like teachers and this and showrunners or whatever that have been, and just say thank you. I know you don't know, or maybe it doesn't, but it meant so much to me that I didn't feel crazy anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't feel like, oh, these guys are gaslighting me, and I didn't like, I didn't feel, I felt seen and validated, and that is what all of us want in this life.
When did you start writing after that?
I have always written, but I wasn't till first year of university that I thought I had one of those moments of one of those beautiful instructors who took me out of the classroom and said, you're really good at this, and if you want to do this, you can do this. And I said, oh, thanks. And I didn't even and he actually, which I'm sure you're not legally allowed to do, took me by my shoulders and said, listen to me. I'm telling you, you are really good at this. And if you want to do this as a profession, you can. And I heard him. All of a sudden I heard him, and I felt like this little thing maybe wasn't just I thought everybody wrote. I swear to you, I thought everybody wrote and could write. I was literally shocked. I think I was in high school, and we couldn't get the rights to a play, to put on a play. And I said, well, let's just write a play. And everybody kind of looked at me like I was insane. And I thought, oh, doesn't everybody just write plays at home for fun? I'm like, no, everyone does not write plays at home for fun, Anne Marie. What are you talking? I'm like, oh, okay. All right, that was news to me. So to have somebody say your gift, it's not just a little hobby. You can actually do this the way that I, was so meaningful. So it really was shifted the focus of my university years in production to hey, if I can write my way into this world, I'm gonna try and do it.
What I love of hearing your story is how God's hand was on you at
Absolutely.
an early age. That
Mhm.
this woman, whoever she was, God bless her, but she actually saved you.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
scripture in Genesis 50:20, where it says, what the devil meant for evil, I have worked out for your good.
yes,
And so she meant it to crush you, but
yes.
God brought an angel to tell you, that's
Mm-mm.
not how it
Not
is.
today.
You
Not
can
today.
do what you want to do. And I think it's important for artists. There's always going to be someone who comes to crush you. That
Absolutely.
I don't know any artist who has had the green light all the way throughout their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they look great now, at some point someone told them no. Someone
Yes.
tried to beat it out of them, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. But what God has for you, nobody can take from you.
Mm-hmm.
And that as artists, we have to create art just like we have to breathe.
Absolutely.
And God will send us those angels. He will send us those people to keep us back on track, to keep us, to say no, keep going. This
Mm-hmm.
guy,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, in hearing your story, I believe he was the seed planter. So when you
Mm-hmm.
got to university, and that teacher said to you, you can do this for a living, he was pouring water on that seed
Yes.
to say, I can do
Absolutely.
whatever I want. I can do
Absolutely.
whatever I want. And it's
Absolutely.
beautiful, it's just beautiful. First of all, it's beautiful knowing you. I'm always jazzed to be in your presence. I'm always uplifted because you are, you're my birthday sister.
You are my birthday
And, and
sister.
I love your spirit, but most of all, I love your wisdom. How you always have some words of wisdom and encouragement, and you're always seeing how to get to the other side. You
Mhm.
know, you would have been great in the desert saying, "Yeah, we can go, we can take it." Before Caleb and Joshua said we could take the land, you would have been
Yes,
there going to
yes.
everybody's campsite. Hey, come on, we can take it. Let's go, we can take it. So I just love you. I love you so much. I am so proud of, first of all, the woman you have become,
Thank you.
and to see your growth and your maturity, and to see you, you've always been yourself, but to see it magnified 100 times today, to
Thank you.
just see all these different opportunities and challenges, because opportunities always bring challenges. Whoever tells you it doesn't, they're lying.
Mhm.
Dog. And shoot them and put them out of their misery. But just kidding. But opportunities always bring challenges.
Mhm.
Nothing that you get is free.
Yes,
it,
true.
it may not, on the other side, you said this earlier, is that everybody wants what you have now, but they don't want to pay the dues to get
Mhm.
there. And
Mhm.
so if we as artists understand that part of the greatness of being an artist is the challenges,
Mhm.
is the, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get this done, I don't know, but let's keep going,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
we got to get to the other side,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but while we're crossing over, to remember to be joyful, to remember to be encouraged. In the Bible, I love where David had to encourage himself in the
Mm.
Lord when all his
Yes.
men were like, "We want to
Yes.
kill you, you did
Yes.
this to us." they
Yeah.
they came, raided the campsite, took the women, took the children, took everything.
Mhm.
And they're like, "What did you do to us, David?"
Mhm.
And David didn't
Mhm.
have anybody to say, "Can you help me?" So the only person he could go to was
Yes.
God. He
Yeah.
encouraged himself in God, that there are moments when our finances are in the red. There are moments where
Mhm.
the rejection is so high. There are
Mhm.
moments where you don't feel like you're part of a tribe, that you have to encourage yourself. You
Absolutely.
have to give that back to yourself. And I love that you are that kind of person to other people. So I just thank you for all you do for the community in
Mhm.
general, and people you love, special. That you give extra, that I want to leave with one thing. I want you to just hit on this one thing, because I thought it
Mhm.
was so wonderful, where you said, "Don't let anyone make their problem your problem."
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting that people will want to, human nature is always there's strength in numbers, and so sometimes that is recruiting as many people as you can to misery, to poor behavior, to but what you choose, your conduct, and I say this in the rooms, like, your conduct does not determine my character. So if you choose to operate this way, if you choose to, you want to be a problem, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is for me to take on and to embrace. Sometimes you are the only person standing for something else, and I think we have to be willing for that to cost us something, because it costs a lot historically. Today, we look around. Sometimes it costs you something to take the position, the posture, the stand that you feel is right. And I think we've got to be ready and willing to do that now, because what is lost when we take on that problem and we make it our problem, we take on that attitude, we make it our attitude, we take on that we lose uh, something of our own integrity, we lose something of our own voice, we lose something of our own strength and vision, and we lose an opportunity to become better. So yeah, don't do it. Don't let somebody's problem be your problem. Don't let somebody's conduct determine your character. Make the decision about who you want to be in this industry and in this world, and you pursue it.
What is a project, a passion project of yours that you can't wait to do?
Mm. Well, it is probably the one I wrote post The Porter. I had spent back-to-back historical shows, and I was like, Lonnie, I just want to do something that is fun for myself. And I wrote a 1 hour series spec, Black Girl Vampire. So I was like, yes, this is fun. Like, and I love that script so much. And I won't, sort of tell the concept of the show, but I love it. So I go back to it's my happy place, and people don't expect it, I think, of me, but I was like, that's what I love. I love defying your expectations. Still going to be amazing characters. It's a world you haven't seen me in, but this girl, her time has come. Her show is about to. So yes, I'm super excited about Black Girl Vampires. Yes, I am.
And what would you like your legacy to be?
Oh my goodness. I would love for my legacy in this industry to be uh, sharing a stage, or um, I don't even have to be sharing the stage. Just being able to look at storytellers across the world and be able to say within myself, I planted a seed for their success. I, helped maybe cut down some of the brush for them to walk that path. I want to see and hear the stories that um, aren't easy to find, the voices that the world needs to hear.
What would you like Black Americans to know about Canadian Blacks?
Ooh, we are different people. We are different. We love you all, but there is not just one way to be in our skin, as there's not one way to be in your skin. And learn of us and our history, and as we learn of yours, beyond Drake and the Weekend, we're more than that. We're more than that. They're amazing Black Canadians doing brilliant things. Uh, and I would love to have full conversations with the people that make our countries proud, that shape our histories, and that requires us learning from each other. I would love for that to be the thing that happens.
And you are actually being part of that now. So
Yeah.
thank you. You're
Oh,
actually
my
being part
pleasure.
of the conversation and showing uh, a different side of humanity for Black people in Canada by the Porters. I mean, it just opens up a whole different perspective, a whole different conversation, and a different understanding of, wow, we went through this, but they went through that,
Mm-hmm.
and you haven't even touched on the Jamaican experience, which is a
Mm-hmm.
whole other
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That that diaspora of
Yes.
all the Caribbean islands are so different and so vast,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to hear more of that as well. So
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
thank you for
And you
being the
will.
writer who puts that out, who's helping to
Oh,
put it out into the world, and the more experience that you have being a global citizen, the more profound those stories will be.
that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm excited to hear the sort of the new wave and the new generation of different uh, voices that are coming to the forefront, and I'm excited for that too. So it's going to be an interesting few years ahead, and hopefully we will all be well compensated when the strike is over for those.
So this program was brought to you by Acting Smarter Now, the online course for actors who want to be empowered and take on this business in a marvelous way. So go to actingsmarternow.com and get all the information, as well as my Acting Smarter planner. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you on the other side.